The lone survivor of a shattered dynasty, Abdul Rahman had defied death, crossed deserts and claimed Cordoba as his own. But as the dust of his victories settled, the real battle began. In a land riddled with betrayal and unrest, could a fugitive prince truly forge an empire? Or would the forces that hunted him in the past rise again to destroy his future? A challenge was awaiting Abdul Rahman how to unite this chaotic land under one banner. Al-Andalus was a turbulent region that was swaying in chaos where Arabs, Berbers, and native Iberians vied for dominance. The Muslim conquest of Iberia had brought some opportunities to this region decades earlier, but also sowed the seeds of deep divides. Each rival group was hungry for power, and they turned on one another in endless conflict. Leaders rose and fell like waves on a stormy sea, incapable to unite the land or provide a solid vision for its future. Even when he laid the foundation for his government, conspiracies started to develop, threatening everything he had struggled for. Along with this disarray, there were social and cultural rifts. Arabs, who were initially in power, considered themselves superior, and they often had fights with the Berbers, the North African warriors. These tensions were further increased by the grudges of native Iberians, who were already struggling under the weight of foreign involvement. Instead of harmony, Al-Andalus was a cauldron of mistrust and competition, where every group was fighting for its share of influence. This lack of unity affected the economy badly. Agriculture stagnated, trade was delayed, and the absence of centralized governance left the land vulnerable to external threats and internal decay. Towns and cities that thrived under Visigothic and Roman rule were crumbling due to negligence. This was the picture of Al-Andalus when the young fugitive prince entered here, full of chaos. For the sake of unity, he would have to bridge divides and transform this territory into a symbol of strength and prosperity. All of this seemed impossible, but could he be able to truly overcome such deep-rooted disarray? Abdul Rahman saw in Al-Andalus what no one else could. For him, it was a land that was brimming with potential despite its flaws. It was a plain slate upon which he could write his vision of a unified and thriving state. He understood that forces alone could never hold together a territory so deeply divided. Al-Andalus wanted a leader who could inspire loyalty, build bridges, and create a unified sense of purpose. His great mission began with diplomacy. Abdul Rahman worked tirelessly to build alliances between the Arab factions and Berbers. He didn't demand blind commitment, but promised a future that would be stable and opportunities for those who will stand with him. He reached out to influential tribes, negotiated peace where possible, and offered positions of power to those willing to cooperate. His charm and persuasion was as vital as the sword he carried. But there were certain areas where diplomacy failed, so Abdul Rahman was never afraid to act decisively. His military campaigns were prompt and calculated, which targeted rival leaders who threatened his rule. His aim wasn't just to dominate, but he aimed to unite, ensuring that even his conquered enemies could find a place in Al-Andalus. Also, catering to tribal divisions was his most important task. Arabs and Berbers were made to understand that unity can be their only way to survive. Through his efforts, Abdul Rahman began to establish a weak but lasting unity between the people of Al-Andalus. Surely it wasn't an easy task, but he approached it with determination. He dreamed of a prosperous state, and as he worked hard toward his vision, new challenges loomed, testing his resolve and the unity he sought to establish. Abdul Rahman's quest to unite Al-Andalus was anything but smooth. His arrival and subsequent rise to power disrupted the fragile balance among the ruling elites, making him a target of rival factions. His each towards his vision seemed to spark another challenge, another betrayal, and another battle. Yet it was in these struggles that Abdul Rahman's smart strategies truly shone. One of his earliest and most decisive confrontations that we have already touched on in our previous episode was against Yusuf al-Fihri, the governor of Al-Andalus, who refused to relinquish power. Yusuf underestimated the young prince, dismissing him as an outsider with no real claim. Abdul Rahman responded not with rash aggression but with careful strategy. He built alliances with dissatisfied Arab tribes and Berber warriors, forming an army strong enough to face Yusuf's forces. This clash ended up in the Battle of Al-Musara, where Abdul Rahman's tactical marvel and unyielding strategies secured his victory, and Yusuf fled. But this victory against Yusuf on the battlefield was only the start. Loyalty among his allies was flimsy at best. Many tribes who had fought alongside him did so out of convenience, not conviction. Abdul Rahman knew that trust could not be demanded, it had to be earned. He rewarded his supporters generously, granting them land and positions of influence, but he remained watchful for signs of betrayal. Even within his court, dissension cultivated. Few generals and governors tested his authority occasionally, believing they could manipulate the young emir. However, Abdul Rahman responded decisively, quelling disobedience without any hesitation. Yet, he ensured his punishments were seen as just rather than dictatorial. Although these struggles were alongside, Abdul Rahman's vision for unity began to take shape. Each victory, each act of diplomacy, and each confrontation cemented his grip on Al-Andalus. Still, the question lingered: could this fragile unity withstand the storms of division that continued to loom? Although Al-Andalus was slowly building under his rule, Abdul Rahman knew that to unite this land in true means, he required a strong and symbolic center for his empire. He wanted a place that would personify his vision. For this, he chose a city, Cordoba. At first glance, Cordoba may not seem like a perfect choice. Although the city had an acclaimed past, it had fallen into shabbiness after years of neglect and disarray. But Abdul Rahman saw behind all this. To him, the potential of the city outweighed its current state. Strategically located along the Guadalquivir River, the city wasn't only geographically at the center, but also wealthy in resources and trade opportunities. The city had the power to connect the dispersed regions of Al-Andalus, both physically and ideologically, under one umbrella. Its geographical location was something special, but Cordoba represented something deeper, a chance to rebuild not just a city, but an identity. Abdul Rahman poured his heart and soul in transforming Cordoba into a flourishing center of economic vitality, political power, and cultural marvel. He started off by building its defenses, ensuring that this city could stand firm against any storms from within or beyond the borders. Talking about economy, Abdul Rahman gave new strength to trade routes and motivated merchants, artisans, and scholars to settle in Cordoba, which will create an atmosphere of opportunity and advancement. He was aware that prosperity would not only attract loyalty but also strengthen his credibility as a leader who could provide a better and bright future for Al-Andalus. Culturally, the renewal of Cordoba has just begun. Abdul Rahman dreamed of a city that would be a center of Islamic art, knowledge, and science in the continent. The basis was being made for a resurgence of Cordoba, a city that would leave an unforgettable mark on history. And as the city began to awaken, new challenges arose. Could Cordoba actually rise as the heart of Abdul Rahman's empire, or would it surrender to the pressures that had fractured Al-Andalus for so long? As Cordoba began its transformation, Abdul Rahman was surrounded by the shadows of different dangers. The throne he struggled so hard to claim was nowhere near safe. His dream of a united and prosperous empire faced constant opposition, not just from external enemies, but from within his groups. Internal conspiracies were a constant threat he was facing. They were constantly testing his ability to govern and protect his empire. Some felt that his rise was a short-lived success, and this would be an opportunity for them to seize power. Conspiracies that were once murmured in darkened chambers turned into open rebellions. Each betrayal was personal, an indication that trust was a currency he could never afford to spend impulsively. But these threats were not only limited to Al-Andalus. The Abbasids, on the other hand, viewed Abdul Rahman as a danger for their caliphate. Abdul Rahman's survival was a stain on their legitimacy and a challenge to their authority. And for his elimination, they sent assassins and agitated rebellions in Al-Andalus, aiming to undermine his governance. In the north, there were Christian kingdoms who were ever watchful. They tested his borders, looking for weaknesses. They viewed the internal divisions of Al-Andalus as a chance to regain their lost territories. They attacked and challenged his authority. All such threats pushed Abdul Rahman's rule to the edge, but they also revealed his relentless resolve. He responded to every challenge with computed strength, employing his military brilliance, political insight, and determination to not just defend his empire, but to strengthen it. So could Abdul Rahman get around both the enemies within and the powerful forces beyond borders. With every challenge he overcame, his dream came closer to reality, but the stakes were also getting higher by each passing day. In the midst of these external threats and internal conspiracies, Abdul Rahman remained dedicated to his eventual goal. He worked relentlessly to lay the foundation of a prosperous and unified Al-Andalus. He knew that true power did not lie only in military success, but in the strength of an organized, flourishing society. And so, even though swords clashed and whispers of betrayal filled the air, Abdul Rahman began planting the seeds of what would one day blossom into a golden garden of Islam. First, he worked for the transformation of the fractured administration. Abdul Rahman organized governance by appointing capable leaders that were also loyal to his vision, regardless of their tribal origins. Chaos was replaced with structure, ensuring that each region of Al-Andalus was connected to Cordoba's central government. This not only helped in reducing corruption, but also developed a sense of shared purpose among the diverse population. As for the economy, he encouraged trade. Recognizing Al-Andalus's strategic position as a bridge between Europe and the Islamic world, he established trade routes, opened markets, and revitalized commerce. Artisans, merchants, and traders gathered in the cities and infused the economy with power and ambition. Under Abdul Rahman's rule, the region began to transform from a fragmented land to a flourishing economic hub. However, Abdul Rahman's vision was something far beyond administration and trade. He recognized the power of culture to unify people. He invited scholars, poets, and architects, setting the stage for a cultural rebirth. Public works projects began to emerge, pointing at the architectural wonders that would define Al-Andalus in the years to come. The building of his fort was one remarkable architectural wonder. All his efforts were just the beginning, but the impact was unforgettable. For the first time in years, Al-Andalus began to stabilize. Once barren fields began to yield crops, markets were buzzing with life, and Cordoba's skyline hinted at a brighter future. Abdul Rahman's planted seeds were now turned into small plants, but they would need careful tending, and the storms of opposition weren't over. As Cordoba had a rebirth, the empire itself hung in a delicate balance. Abdul Rahman had sown the seeds of unity in this region, but the soil beneath them wasn't stable. The remains of past divisions were present, and not everyone was ready to embrace the changes he wanted to bring. Whispers of rebellion gathered strength beyond the city. Rival factions were carefully observing his every move, waiting for the perfect moment to strike against his rule. Across the borders of Al-Andalus, powerful groups planned to ruin that fragile calm that Abdul Rahman had worked so relentlessly to build. Each day brought new challenges and each night new threats. Would his vision for Cordoba, a city poised to become the heartbeat of Al-Andalus, survive the internal and external storms? Could his dream of a united and thriving empire withstand the forces wanting to take it down? Or would the shadows of betrayal consume everything he had struggled so hard to create?